Today I'm doing urban sketching. No, you see it's urban sketching, not urban sketching. Roll the title. Now I've done some urban sketching, but today I'm going to be trying some new things, some techniques that are taught by Ian Fennelly. He's a wonderful urban sketcher who has a lively, colorful, whimsical approach to urban sketching. I will be using hot press paper, which I haven't used before, Tombow markers, which are water soluble, and the way that Ian uses these, he holds on to the end and then he sketches very loosely, holding the other end. I'm going to be following some of the things that he does that I haven't necessarily done before, and I'll talk you through what I do right and what I would try to improve on in the future. Rough sketch with a Tombow water-based marker. Now you can see in the video that I'm holding it a little bit too tight, so I need to work on letting it be a little bit more freer and holding it further up the end of the marker. The great thing about these markers is that you do the sketch with them very rough, very loose, and then when you go over it with the fine liners, you can make any adjustments that you need. And then when you add watercolor, these lines disappear because they're water soluble. This is an interesting technique that I've never done before. This marker is an N89, it's a very light neutral. As I'm doing the drawing, I'm trying to exaggerate the angles a little bit to give it a little bit more fun, a little bit more dynamics, really pointed towards that archway. With practice, I think I'll have more fun with this style. I'm overthinking things right now. Let's skip over to inking with the fine liners. Working on hot press paper made the lining very, very easy. The paper is so smooth. So both the Tombow markers and the fine liners work very well on this paper. Now, because I already had the sketch underneath with the Tombows, this allows me to go over it, and as I'm going over it, I can add some of the texture to the lines. Areas where the cement is rough, I can make the lines a little bit more expressive. Whether you're on location or working in the studio from a photo, the important thing about urban sketching is telling the story. What is it about this location that interests you, that excites you? For me, this photo with all the doorways and the archway that just keeps leading into other doorways, all the potted plants in the terracotta pots, it just screams out a little community, a little neighborhood, and it seems quaint. And that's what I wanted to focus on. Now, I'm not focusing specifically on what kind of plants they are, because I don't know anything about plants, but I don't have to. I just have to get the feeling that this is like a neighborhood garden. The cobblestone road adds a lot of character, but I was not going to sit there and try to draw every single one of those bricks. So I just hinted at them, drawing them here and there. The important thing is that they get smaller as they get further away. When it comes to adding tones to the picture, a lot of hatching and using the markers to shade in areas will help. The markers will then blend in with the watercolors, and that helps tone the colors as you're painting. I want the focus to be the center of the picture with the archway, but I would like the eye to travel up the road and then go to the left and hit that door. So I'm going to do the door in blues the same way that I'm going to do the shadows in the archway. And then from there I would like the eye to travel up to above the archway where the potted plants are. And then after that, I think I'm going to use a lavender, which has blue tones in it but is warmer, to show the light on the other side of this archway. And do that building so that it draws the eye down again right back to the center of the archway. I'm using a 9x12 block of watercolor paper. You can see that I've gone right to the edges of the paper. And spoiler alert, I overpaint the painting. Not being used to the hot press paper and how light and smooth that the paint moves around on it, I kind of go back over it to make things darker. Now I wanted the archway to really be dynamic, but looking back on it in hindsight, I'm happy with it, but I think I've overpainted. I would have preferred to have kept the color mostly down the center and had both the color and the image fade out towards the sides. Here is a good example of how the marker undertones blend in with the paint and make a really nice shadow in the blue. Later I do another coat and make it darker and more dynamic, and that kind of makes the marker shading irrelevant. It's just an example of how I am still learning how to do this style and falling back onto old habits of painting the way I'm used to painting. Mixing the blue and the orange together, you get this nice graduation of tones from the blue into kind of a greeny blue, and then the orange, and then that fades out into a yellowish tone. I'm happy the way the lavender turned out in that back building, but then the far building I probably should have just left in gray tones, and the edges of the painting I should have just let them fade out into gray tones. After filling in the green, I realized that the terracotta pots, those lovely pots, were just getting lost. So I ended up doing another coat on the pots. This urban sketch is all about learning. Learning how to use those markers, learning how to mix them with the watercolor. So I decided to use the black markers and go back over and make the shadows even more dynamic and mix it in with the watercolor. My thinking is that since I've painted from one end to the other, I've spread out the focus. So if I go darker on the areas that I wanted, then I pull the focus back to the place that I want it to be. Last thing I do is add a little bit of blue wash in front of the doorway on the left. It might not be exactly what I planned, but it was a good learning experience and fun to use new products. You can support my channel by subscribing so YouTube will share my videos with more people. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you ring that bell, you'll be notified every time I post a video. Thank you for watching.